All right, it is 12:30. We will go ahead and get started. Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining Dynow's October webinar. The title of this webinar is How to Maximize the Activation of Learning Technology on a District Level. I'm joined today by Jacob Standish from Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools. Before we dive into the webinar, I want to give everyone a little background into Dyknow if you're not familiar with what we do here. Dyknow is a classroom management solution that helps teachers defeat device distractions in the classroom by identifying those distractions and eliminating them using different features within our product. We're really committed to helping our network better understand how to manage a student device program by utilizing our customers' voices, understanding how they're doing certain things in their schools, and then hopefully you can take that and use that in your school. So this month we partnered with Jacob Standish from Charlotte-Mecklenburg. As I said, we wanted to do a webinar on how to activate technology on a district level, because now that we're in October, we're kind of halfway through the semester. The beginning of the year is when you typically start to choose which new technologies you're going to implement. And by this time, you've probably already begun to activate them. Maybe you've run into some roadblocks. So we wanted to learn from Jacob on how he goes from start to finish with choosing software and then activating it within his district of Charlotte-Mecklenburg. So your webinar experience today is being recorded and it will be made available to all attendees and registrants after the webinar, probably today or tomorrow. Feel free to share that with anyone in your network who you feel would benefit from it. Our recordings are really helpful for those who didn't even get to attend. We will also be enabling Q&A during the webinar, so feel free to submit questions throughout. We'll address them at the end, and Jake will answer anything you have. I can also answer any Dyknow questions that you have. Happy to do so. So before we dive into some questions for Jacob, I'm going to go ahead and introduce us. My name is Tiara Lustig. I'm a marketing specialist here at Dyknow. I really focus on talking to customers, learning their stories and what they do. Like I said, I'm joined by Jacob. Jacob, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm a program manager for technology services at Charlotte-Mecklenburg Schools. Been in the role for about 5 years now, and implementing tools like Dino, as well as Google Apps for Education, our learning management system, Canvas, and just supporting the tech coach role across the district, as well as the teachers in utilizing digital learning tools for maximizing learning.
Great. We're happy to have you with us today. We're hoping to learn a lot. So we will dive into some questions now. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Hopefully you all can see us. So our first question, Jake, is kind of for the beginning of your tech learning process. How do you decide what learning technology should be invested in on a district level?
So most important there is involving all of the stakeholders for that particular need. And that defining who the stakeholders are can be a really important first step. Identifying teachers, students, the school leadership, district leadership, board, even the parents and the families that are affected by that resource. A tool like Dyknow, definitely that comes up. We have families wanting to know about this, and are we watching their screens all the time and anywhere they are? And those kind of questions come up. So it always is important, that first step, to involve everyone involved that will be affected by the technology that you're using. And also we've got to keep in mind our strategic plan and any instructional goals that we have across the district. Making sure that the technology that we might be seeking seems great, but does it actually help us move forward in terms of those strategic plans and instructional goals? So those are the two things you want to keep paramount in your thought process as making decisions about new technology.
Totally makes sense. Just a question to go off of that. How long does that process typically take from you discovering a new tool to you deciding that it's worth investing in?
So that can vary a lot. For a district of our size, some of that has to do with just the price point, how much it's going to cost, not just for procuring funds, but also like we have state laws concerning purchases of a certain amount require requests for bids. So you have to review proposals. You have to publicly announce that you're looking to find a solution, and that can really extend the process. So it really I would say for like with Dino, it's funny you were mentioning earlier, we're in October. That's actually when we implemented Dino a couple of years ago. We were reviewing and thinking about the process, but we did not really have everything in place, didn't have everything aligned. That process went from about June until October to actually implement Dino. So for our district, that is pretty typical, maybe 3 months. Would be very reasonable time frame, and having a company like Dino that's really easy to work with helps a lot. Like we have to establish data privacy policies, make sure that we have a memorandum of understanding of how student data is shared and everything. So there's a lot of things that have to happen no matter what technology is being implemented, and 3 months I would say is definitely a safe assumption for the amount of time, if not longer.
Makes sense. Your district is so large, it makes sense that it would take a while. So next question, kind of going off of that, this is something that we see at Dino a lot, is teachers being really interested in using our product and wanting to go to their administrator or IT director to get that product implemented. If a teacher finds a learning technology that they want to implement, how do you recommend they go about getting that technology team and their administrators on board?
All right. So it really takes it can vary by the product, but a big piece of that is determining the technical requirements for it first, and making sure that it's we're able to get it to work within our system, but then training those the coaches and the teachers, communicating what really is planned and expected for that product is crucial. I'm not sure if I'm answering that. I'm sorry. I think I'm looking at my notes. I'm not sure that the question matches what I had.
Yeah, that makes sense. So then I think you might have been, so I switched the questions around a little bit. I think you might have been looking at the second question, but that goes into the next question. So what the process is for activating the different learning technologies once you've decided to invest in them, and how do you train the technology teams versus the teachers?
Yeah. So yeah, determining how we're going to leverage the technology really depends on if we need to roster the users, how they're going to authenticate. Does the tool itself have its own portal for logging in, or does it require us to can we integrate it into our single sign-ons like Clever or Google Apps? Just depending on those kinds of things are really some technical hurdles that we have to go through that also affect the training of the end user. The hardest question I have when it comes to using Dino is, how do I log in? I love that that's really the hardest question, but like once we get people in, they're usually pretty good with using it. And that's the logging in simply enough is a crucial part of the training, and training the site level staff is definitely something we do. We train our tech coaches and provide them with the resources, because they're the ones that are going to see the teachers daily and be able to give that side-by-side coaching. And so we definitely provide resources to our tech coaches and train them first, to ensure that train them the most, let's say, because oftentimes tech coaches change, and there'll be teachers in the building that had access to Dino before the tech coach ever did. But we really, at the district level, focus in on certain roles at the school and train them to then help train the teachers.
Makes sense. So then once that technology is activated in the classrooms, how do you ensure that those technologies are being used effectively in each classroom throughout the district? And if they're not, how do you go about reactivating them so they're being used to their full potential?
Yeah, and that is really a important aspect of everything that we spend money on. We make sure that we're leveraging the product to its full potential, that we're getting the most out of it. And that goes back to your question one about alignment to strategic goals and instructional goals, just making sure that it's actually relevant. I mean, we find sometimes we have a subscription to a service that we've just had for a long time, but it doesn't necessarily match with anything we're currently doing. It's just we've always had it, and we got to have some hard conversations about, is this of value? One thing to keep note, and it's real easy to get caught up in the anecdote, the story about how it is or isn't functioning, but getting data about usage, being able to run some analysis on its correlation to student performance. Those kinds of things are really important, and those conversations will have to span many teams. You've got curriculum teams, and you've got technology, and you've got the school, and there are a lot of stakeholders involved in that. But it's important to keep in mind that the plural of anecdote is not data. It's very important to have good analytics on usage and have a pulse of how effective this product is. If it isn't effective, then again, those are hard conversations, but do we believe this product is capable of supporting our agenda, our learning goals and a strategic plan? And if they are, maybe we look at how can we increase adoption? How can we increase using this with fidelity? And that does involve focusing efforts from different training teams and finding creative ways to provide training. We do a lot of virtual training these days, and creating kind of just-in-time experiences so that the teacher or student or whoever needs to get to that resource, when they get there, they have the tools to leverage it immediately. We can't keep tacking on more and more professional development. We have to provide the professional development right where they need it, when they need it. So it's getting creative with that. I don't know that we've cracked the code in any way, but really, once we define we're paying this much money for a product, how do we make it more effective? Well, we're going to have to invest in training of some variety.
So are there resources that you have kind of stacked up for your teachers and tech coaches where if a product isn't doing what you want it to be doing, they can go there themselves and see how to improve it?
Yeah, we're getting better with that. Yes, we've been leveraging a learning management system for going into our fourth year now, and really have built a lot of momentum around creating a resource hub for learning resources within there. So it's kind of people are pointed there to get to the resources they need, a uniform location to find the support. So that, I would say, it's important to be consistent so that everyone gets familiar with where you go to find the answers, for sure.
It's a good strategy. So then kind of a more Dino related question. What was the process at Charlotte-Mecklenburg from discovery to activation of Dino, and what was Charlotte like before you had Dino, and what has it been like since you've had Dino?
So we were researching screen monitoring solutions. We went one-to-one with Chromebooks for about a year, and we're starting to hear from the teachers very clearly that they needed something to be able to tell what students were doing on the Chromebook when they weren't sitting right next to the student. They really wanted some solutions to monitor. And, we're a big district, and I think some of the vendors that provide solutions realized that we had so many Chromebooks and knew that there would be that need. So they started courting teachers and schools individually and really encourage them to use their product. Unfortunately, a lot of technical things that get in the way of that, and some vendors are very eager to just take the check rather than help make sure that it's effective. So anyways, I was studying what was available and learned about Dyknow, and I was immediately impressed with just the philosophy of Dyknow and how they how you really it's about providing just enough tools for what the teacher needs to ensure students are on task. It doesn't have a bunch of cruft and things that just make it so that the teacher feels empowered by sitting at their desk and watching screens. Like you can just access the logs after the fact. I appreciated that philosophy. We sought out Dino specifically after looking at all the other products and just bringing everyone in and talking about it. It was the best fit for us, for sure. So before we had Dino, yeah, a lot of pressure to acquire things and people trying to do it their own way, not so effectively. But since then, we don't have that pressure. No one's begging us to look at other products. They're happy with what they have. And occasionally there's people that just don't even realize what they have and haven't used it yet. So when you show it to them, it's just that light bulb, and that they're so impressed. So I guess our biggest challenge is some of our elementary schools don't have Dyknow because we haven't purchased it for the K-5 grade levels. So that's a lot of schools find the funds to purchase it separate from the district purchase. But that's been my biggest problem now. We don't have it for quite everyone yet. But yeah, the schools are able to monitor students and see what's happening. They're once they understand what's possible with Dyknow, it's exactly what they wanted.
Yeah, and I think something you said really aligns with the topic of this webinar and how Dyknow supports it. You know, we want teachers, since we have a very small set of features to allow teachers to be able to monitor effectively, we want to enable teachers to manage that on their own so that they can themselves maximize your investment in these different learning technologies in the classroom, and they're not wasting time focusing on what students are doing on their devices.
Yeah, for sure. And it becomes, everything gets flipped into, okay, now you know what the students are doing. Now it's a behavior issue. Now you can address it the way schools have addressed behavior issues since the beginning of schools, you know? So the technology does exactly what the technology should be doing, and it doesn't distract with other things.
Right. That kind of wraps up all the questions that we had to cover. If anyone who's joining us has any questions for Jacob or myself, we'd be happy to answer them. We'll give you guys a few minutes to submit those if you have anything to submit. Jake, is there anything else you'd like to discuss or talk about in relation to activating learning technology, or any advice you would give to our listeners?
Like I said before, identifying who your stakeholders are is a very important first step. And you know, when you think about whatever your role is, who's influenced by this technology, and how can I ensure that each of them is prepared for how to leverage it and maximize its use.
Totally makes sense. It doesn't look like we have any questions, so I think I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again. Yeah, we don't have any questions, so we'll jump to the end of this. Thank you so much, Jake, for joining us. We really appreciate it. We hope everyone who joined learned a lot, has something they can take away and use in their classroom. Like I mentioned, we will have the recording of this webinar up probably by the end of today or tomorrow. It'll be on our blog. Go ahead and subscribe to Dino if you would like to. We have a ton of great content for tech coaches, admins, and teachers that you can share with your network or use yourself. And then we also have been really active on Twitter and posting a lot of great stuff on there as well. So little plug for Dino. Jake, thank you so much for joining us again. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.